much I owe you now for these things? I'll bring you some
Well,
money.
just whenever.
I'll bring you the money tonight, probably.
Good morning, everyone. As we have studied previously in the book of Ecclesiastes, there's a time for everything. And it's time to start our class. It's a pleasure to see each of you here this morning. We are slowly but surely getting to the end of this quarter. We've got a couple of Sundays to go and a little over 4 chapters. So I'm going to move a little quicker than we have in the past, but I think we'll be able to conclude or at least get to a stopping point. We're at the end of chapter 8. I think we probably stopped around verse 14 of chapter 8, so that's where we will begin this morning. Solomon again addresses the injustices in life and how things don't always seem to be fair necessarily. My mother would say to me when I remember as a child, I would say, well, that's not fair. And she'd say, no, it's not fair, but it's what's right. So sometimes it's not what's fair, but it's what's right. It may not always be fair. Solomon says in verse 14, there's a futility which is done on the earth, that is, there are righteous men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked. On the other hand, there are evil men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I say that this too is futility. So again, we see the 19th futility, the 9th vanity. But what we have to look at is, as he says, there is futility which is done on the earth. We're not talking about heaven. We're talking about what happens on the earth. So, total different perspective that we will talk about a little bit more. But don't we see that every day? We see bad things happening to good people. We see good things happening to people that you just think, wow, man, that happened to that guy. I mean, he's not the really best looked upon person maybe in the community, and then there's all kind of good fortune that comes his way. But on this earth, that's the turn of events. We will talk about chance. He says, so I commended pleasure, for there is nothing good for a man under the sun on this earth, except to eat and to drink and to be merry, and this will stand by him in his toils throughout the days of his life, which God has given him under the sun. Okay, now we come to a pretty good key in all of this. Since all is vanity, the wise man now reveals a key finding. With God in his life, a person can enjoy peace, happiness, and be joyful. Be happy. We can't understand it, so don't judge the ways of God. It says that it's which God has given us, so it is a gift. We've said it in chapter 2. We said it in chapter 5. It's given here a third time. Enjoy life. It is a choice. If you're not happy and enjoying your life, you got a problem with the approach, with your focus on life. Yeah, we're going to have trouble, even if we're good, even if we're bad. It's going to come, it's going to go, but we've got to make a focus to be happy in our lives. Christians should be happy. We've got hope. We've got a family. We've got all sorts of good. No matter what happens to us in this world, we should try to be happy. It's not an excuse for wickedness. It's not what he's saying, eat, drink, and be merry and just be a party all the time. As he has said before, it's about balance. What about the Pharisees? They were over-righteous. They thought they were better than everyone else. Self-deception. That wasn't balanced. Oh, we're so good, I'm not like this publican over here. You know, so we've got to look at things with balance, a balance between work and pleasure. Chapter 5, verse 20 says that God has given all of this. He says it's our reward. That's part of living on this earth that God is actually giving us. It is a gift from God to be happy, to enjoy. Keep a smile on. Keep a song in your heart. Those times are going to come, of course they are, that depress us, that make us sad, that make us worry, all of these things. But we can push that aside with the hope that we have, okay? So we can't live under this cloud of guilt if we're all going to sin. We all have. If we say that we have not, what are we doing? We're lying. To who? To God? No, to ourselves. God knows. He knows what we're doing. When we say we don't do this or we don't do that, it's self-deception. Once again, we are lying to ourselves. So, Solomon says it's a case of self-deception or overly righteousness, which Solomon says is wickedness and should be avoided. So, thinking ourselves more righteous and thinking ourselves into any position, the wise man says, is wickedness. So that can be a sin to us. All right, as we go into 16, we're kind of beginning a new focus. He's really focusing on the unknown with optimism because of God's presence in his life. After giving all of these thoughts and efforts to understanding life, he realizes that complete wisdom is unattainable. That should make us feel pretty good. If Solomon can't figure it out, you think, I'm going to figure it out? I don't think so. I don't think so. As Christians, it brings the understanding that God's Word is infinite. What does he say? So look at what he started with. In verse 15, he says, so I commended. Then in verse 16, he says, when I gave. Then in verse 17, he said, then I saw. So 16 says, when I gave my heart to know wisdom and to seek the task which has been done on the earth, not in heaven, on this earth, even though one should never sleep day or night, and I saw every work of God, I concluded that the man cannot discover the work which has been done under the sun. Even though a man should seek laboriously, he will not discover. And though the wise man should say, I know, he cannot discover. We're not going to figure it out. Even if we never sleep day or night, if we go 24/7 studying this stuff, we've spent a quarter almost studying this one little 12-chapter book of Ecclesiastes, and have we even scratched? We hadn't gotten that deep into this thing, okay? So it's infinite. It goes on and on no matter how much we study. The work of God is incomprehensible to man. Isaiah 55:8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. That's God talking. That was after Solomon. How about way after Solomon? Romans 11:33. Paul, oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and unfathomable his ways. See, once again, we see Solomon hitting all over this New Testament concept. Even the prophet Isaiah, which is a couple of hundred years after him. But this guy's smart. He sees all of this. God has given his wisdom. We do not know all the answers, but through the Holy Spirit, we know enough to trust God, and that is the conclusion of Solomon's approach as he moves forward. Verse 1 of chapter 9 is a continuation of chapter 8. He says, I commended, I gave, I saw, I concluded, I know. Now at the first verse of chapter 9, he says, for I have taken all of this to heart and explain it that righteous men, wise men, and their deeds are in the hand of God. Man does not know whether it will be love or hatred. Anything awaits him. So he's taken all of this to heart. He said, I've gathered all of this information that I can. Now we're in chapter 9. He's almost to the end of his sermon. And he says, I've tried to put it all together. I've stacked it. I've made it fit. I've put the puzzle together. I still cannot figure it out. No sense of what the future holds, but that is not the case. About hate here, we know the term about love or loving less. He says, man does not know whether it will be love or hatred. Anything awaits him. We know that God is in control. We've talked about the fact that the righteous don't always get everything good, that the evil don't always get everything bad, and people are blessed in different ways. What about Lazarus? Not raised from the dead Lazarus, but the other one. Probably a bunch of people named Lazarus, but the one I'm talking about is the one who was in Abraham's bosom. Had things gone well with him, he seemed like a good guy. He was in Abraham's bosom. Where did he spend his life? At the foot of the rich man's tables, wanting to pick up the crumbs. Okay, so nothing's promised that because you're a good person and a righteous person that everything's going to go well for you. What about the parable of the talents? One guy got 5. One guy got 2. So we're not all blessed the same. It depends on the circumstances of those things. What did Job say? Job said, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. It's all in the hands of the Lord. Verse 2. It is the same for all. There is one fate for the righteous and one for the wicked, for the good, for the clean, for the unclean, for the man who offers a sacrifice and the one who doesn't offer a sacrifice. As the good man is, so is the sinner. As the swearer is, so is the one who swears. Who are we talking about here? Well, the righteous and the wicked, the clean, the unclean, man who offers sacrifice, one who doesn't, good man, sinner, one who will swear, one who's afraid to swear. You would think that the spiritual and that the righteous would be in a better position than the wicked if everything is going to be fair. The righteous has a hope. What Solomon is saying here, it doesn't matter whether you're good, whether you're bad, if you're evil, if you're this, if you're that, if you're all these other things, what's going to happen to both of them? You're going to die. Okay? So what Solomon's talking about is the futility of these things under the sun. Okay, what's happening on this earth. We're not talking about the afterlife. Now, we're going to jump into that here in just a moment. This is an evil that is done, verse 3, this is an evil that is done under the sun, that there is one fate for all men. Furthermore, the hearts of the sons of men are full of evil and insanity in their hearts throughout their lives. Afterwards, they go to the dead. Boom. You're going to die. It's universal. What do we put under the realm of Satan? What is his control? Well, he lives on the earth. The world is his. Sin, death. Okay? So we see under the sun, the devil is in control of this world. It's his domain. It's where we live. It's why Christ had to come to his domain to overcome him. Christ didn't stay in heaven to fight the devil. He had to come to earth because that's his domain. And sin and death are the things that we face. We face sin every day, and we're all going to die. So does that not put us to some degree under the control of Satan? Yeah, because we're living basically in his world. Their hearts are full of evil and insanity. Mankind devises all sorts of things, just constantly thinking of new ways to sin, new ways to do evil, all of this stuff. And Solomon says it's insanity. And it is. Another one of my famous questions, anyone who thinks that it's not insanity, raise your hand. Yeah. So, it is insane. Okay, now here's something. I'm going to go ahead and say this. Paul agreed in Romans chapter 1 when he said Jews, Gentiles, everyone, that first part of Romans, when the Jews are guilty, the Gentiles are guilty, everybody's guilty, because we've seen what God has done with the majesty of his creation. So that alone, Paul says, they're without excuse. You don't have an excuse not to believe in God. It's right in front of us, the good and the evil. Now, here is a point that we haven't brought up. Hit me in the face for some reason. I should have started this whole study with this. We always talk about context, okay? When we read Corinthians and it says you shouldn't get married and all that stuff, you got to look at the context of who they were talking to. Think about the context now of Solomon. He's under the law of Moses. Has the gospel come about? Has Christ come? Has he been sacrificed and crucified where that blood goes backwards and forwards? How much talk through the law of Moses and through the prophets is there about heaven per se? Jesus has not told the world, I'm going to prepare a place for you, and if I'm going to prepare it, I'll come back. We don't know about any of that yet. I mean, it's in there. I'm not saying, y'all understand my point here. Not that there's nothing in the Old Testament about heaven or about the afterlife, but these promises of Jesus and the gospel in these things are one major reason that Solomon is looking at things on this earth and saying this is all futility. Now, granted, this extremely wise man is going to end all of this study by saying, God's in control. Trusting God, he's got us. He's going to take care of us. But as we look at these statements that he makes about the futility of this world, we got to understand the context. That the Christian age, the last days, he wasn't living in those. So he didn't really have a feel for it. Does that, y'all following me there? Does that make sense of what I'm talking about? Okay. So when he says these things, when God talked to Abraham about the promised land, well, they got that promised land, didn't they? They went in there and they got it. Another thing that jumped out to me, how many people that left Egypt made it to the promised land? How many people were on that ark? 7, 8, 8, yeah. How wide is that gate? Okay, there's a little food for thought. All right. Anyway, God wishes that no one perish, that all shall be saved. And that door of hope is open for us. Salvation is there, and we can make it. We got away because of the grace of God. Okay, so we got to keep this in mind when we're analyzing this stuff. Jesus hadn't come. This may help understand some of Solomon's statements. All right, we're all going to die. Verse 4, for whoever is joined with all the living, there is hope. Surely a live dog is better than a dead lion. Dog, lowest of the thought. Lion, power, strength. As long as you're still alive, you're better off being a live dog, because what do you have? You still have hope. You've still got a chance to do good. You've still got a chance to do the thing that God wants you to do. Even if you are a lion, were a lion, if you're dead, what? End of story. The large lady has sung. Okay? So there is no hope there. We know that life has its advantages. Still time for us to do good. What did Paul say at the very end? Got to be 2 Timothy somewhere. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to die and go for my reward. But I really want to kind of stay here so I can keep preaching and keep doing good. Solomon, live dog, dead lion. So we see these concepts of this brilliant man that just run right through all of the teaching of the Scriptures. For the living, verse 5, for the living know they will die, but the dead do not know anything, nor have they any longer a reward, for their memory is forgotten. Indeed, their love, their hate, their zeal have already perished, and they will no longer have a share in all that is done under the sun on this earth. The living know, we know we're going to die. We don't like to talk about it. We've said it several times this morning. We're going to die unless the Lord comes before we do. That is happening to us. The dead, he says, they don't know anything. Well, I don't know about that. To some degree, the rich man that we talked about earlier, Lazarus, he remembered that he had brothers, but he had no control. He was saying, hey, go send somebody. And you know, no matter what he may or may not have remembered, it's futile. And don't let that be confusing. I don't know why I threw that in there. But anyway, the concept is that once you're dead, you have no memory. You have no reward, no hope. Now, the commentators that I read, I didn't really get along with them on this one. When it says that their memory is forgotten, for their memory is forgotten, most of them said, well, once, out of sight, out of mind. If I don't see you anymore, I forget about you. Once you're gone, people don't remember you. They forget about you, and, that's the end of you because nobody thinks about you anymore. As I read it, it seemed to be that it wasn't me forgetting about you, it was you forgetting about everything that you've ever done, okay? Because it says their love, their hate, their zeal have perished. They will no longer have a share in it. Whatever their thoughts, whatever their plans, whatever their hopes, whatever their love, hate, work, whatever, it's gone. No matter what. So that was futility, was it not? It's gone. No control over any of it. Nothing they remember. Indeed, all of that that's done under the sun, nobody's going to remember any of that, and they are certainly not remembering it. So then, here we go again. Eat your bread in happiness. Drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already approved your works. Really? Well, that sounds pretty good. Sounds like being happy. Isn't that what he's saying do? Isn't that not what he says do? God has already approved what you do. That's what the New International Version says. God's already approved what you do. What? He's approved it. Well, what about those things we just said do? Do you see any hate? Did he list that? See any jealousy, envy, oppression of the weak, dealing with 1,000 wives? You see any of that in what he's saying, I think this is what you should do? No, you don't see that. What do you see? Verse 8. Let your clothes be white all the time, and let not oil be lacking on your head. See that. One of the commentators said that the white raiment was cool clothes, that it, reflected heat, and oil on your head. And okay, I buy that, but nah, not for me. Solomon, let your robes be white. Is this not New Testament ringing down? Lead a balanced life, a good life, a righteous life. Let your clothes be white. Don't be dirty. Don't get nasty. Keep balance. Keep balance. Anoint oil on your head. Maybe one of the 2 or 3 most popular scriptures in Bible, 23rd Psalm. Thou what? Thou anointest my head with oil. Who was anointing David's head with oil? God. Okay? Let your robes be white, and let the Lord anoint your head with oil, give you the blessings of life, to be joyful, to be happy, to be cheerful, not to worry about all of the futilities of this world that go on under the sun. What else does he say? Verse 9, enjoy life with the woman whom you love all the days of your fleeting life which is given you under the sun. This is your reward in life, and in your toil in which you have labored under the sun. What about all of that verse we had about he hadn't found a good one in 1,000 women? We talked about all of that in the context of what it actually meant. But what's he saying right now? That woman you love, live with her all, how long? You going to stay with her? All the days of your life. Now here's advice coming from a man who knows a little bit about that. Love that woman and love her all the days of your life. Why? For this is your reward in life, and in your toil which you have given under the sun. So whatever you find to do with your hands, verily do it with all your might, for there is no activity or planning or wisdom in Sheol where you're going. Sheol doesn't mean hell. It means death, just the realm of death, the realm of the devil. So how much planning we going to do? How much work we going to get done? How much? So whatever you got to do, we need to get it done. Now is the time, okay? Because it is what? It is fleeting. There's no activity in your toil which you have done under the sun. It is a fleeting thing. Okay. No work, no ideas, no thought about this world. Okay, 11 and 12, again, I saw, he's steady investigating, that the race under the sun on earth, that the race is not to the swift, and the battle is not to the warrior, neither is bread to the wise, nor wealth to the discerning, nor favor to men of ability. Tortoise and the hare, all of these things are coming into play. Why? For time and chance overtake them all. I hope it wasn't anybody that was related and it was no big deal, but there was a guy, I can't remember how long ago it was driving down I-55, and a bridge that they were building broke and fell right on him when his car was coming through, fell down on top of him, crushed him, killed him. What are the chances of that? Time and chance. I'm a musician. I play the saxophone. In 1990, I cut all the fingers off of my left hand. That's a pretty good trick. Somebody said, wow, man, for you to get your hand back, and that's like 1,000,001. I thought, 1,000,001. Okay, so that means today in Mexico City, it could happen to 21 people. 1,000,001 is not really that much of a long shot. Time and chance. You never know what's going to come around. 11 and 12. 12, moreover, man does not know his time, like fish caught in a treacherous net, birds are trapped in a snare, so the sons of men are ensnared in an evil time when it suddenly falls on them. So that's just a conclusion of what we were talking about. The strong and the weak both die. Don't know when. It's an evil time. It's evil time because death is of whom? Who? Well, it's from the devil. That's why it's evil. That's why death is evil as far as under the sun, because it's devil's control of this world, okay? And we're going to die, and that's his control over us. Control over everyone who has ever lived except our Lord and Savior. And because of him overcoming devil in his domain, never sinning, sin and death, Jesus overcame both of those, and that's the hope that we have blatantly explained to us in the New Testament that Solomon didn't have, okay? He didn't have that to look at. Okay, also I came to see wisdom under the sun, and it impressed me. There was a small city with a few men in it. A great king came to it, surrounded it, constructed large siege work. But there was a poor wise man, and he delivered the city by his wisdom. But nobody remembered that poor man. So I said, wisdom is better than strength, but wisdom of the poor man was despised, and his words were not heeded. The words of the wise heard in quietness are better than the shouting of a ruler among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. I read and studied about this, that little statement, trying to figure it out. Some of the commentators say that the wise man had the answers, but nobody listened to what he said. He could have saved the city. He saved the city. He had a plan, and he presented the plan to save the city, but they didn't pay attention to it. So the city was not saved. They did not heed the wisdom of the poor man, who was not a great, mighty strength man, but he's saying wisdom is better than strength. If they had done what he said, they could have saved their city. But wisdom is only valuable to us if you use it. Only if you use it. We can study this, we can learn this. If we don't put it into application, it's just like this man that had the answer. He could have saved the whole city, but no, because they did not heed what he said. So we see wisdom has power if it's heeded. But a fool, one sinner, a fool, destroys much good. You know, in English, we learned about turning things to a different perspective. The prayer of a righteous man, one righteous, can heed very much. A sinner, bad works, can heed as much, okay? So it's that little bitty bit that could really throw us a curve. We may actually do this. Okay, I know I'm going a little faster, and I hate to run over these things, but I think we're hitting the points, and I hope it will encourage you to go back and study these scriptures some more. This is another case where we know that chapters and verses weren't put down when Solomon was writing, because when he says one sinner destroys much good, verse 1 of chapter 10 says, dead flies make a perfumer's oil stink. So a little foolishness is weightier than all of the honor, all of the wisdom and the honor. Doesn't matter how good the perfume smells, right? Drop a couple of dead flies in a 1,000-gallon tank. What's going to happen? It ain't going to smell like it did before, is it? So this is the whole concept of a little bit of sin, a little bit of wickedness, a little bit of foolishness can blow up the whole deal. That's why he talks about balance. You got to do the smart thing. You got to stay balanced in all of this stuff. And it does, doesn't it? I won't even go here, but I really love raspberries. I'm not going to ask for a raise your hand on this one unless I turn it the other way. If you don't eat them like in 1 day or 2 days, I mean, how long does a raspberry last in the refrigerator? I mean, You come back the next day and it's like, oh man, huh? So yeah, a little bit. I think that is as good an example as I can give you this morning. Yeah, it doesn't take long because we see that a little foolishness can ruin a lot. Verse 2, a wise man's hearts direct him toward the right, but the foolish man's heart directs him toward the left. Well, here's a little bit of political advice for us. Not really, but I couldn't help but say that, and I don't want to offend anyone in here. But what this does for me is we're going to see, let me finish. Even when, verse 3, even when the fool walks down the road, his sense is lacking, and he demonstrates to everyone that he's a fool. If the ruler's temper arises against you, do not abandon your position, because composure allays great offenses. Okay, this is getting toward the end of the book, and Solomon's just starting to throw out more proverbs, okay? They are connected, but he gets an idea and he writes it down. I just couldn't help but, as I read this, look at Solomon's wisdom and the New Testament, verse 2. Wise man directs him toward the right, and the foolish man's heart directs him toward the left. What did Jesus say about the sheep and the goats? Just what my man's saying right here. Sheep to the right, goats to the left. I mean, as I read through this and see these things, it's like, man, this guy, I mean, he's pretty much on top of it. Foolishness is obvious to everyone. It's not hard to recognize one. Even you're walking down the side of the road, he says, everybody can see just by the way you're walking down the street that you're a fool, that you ain't got any sense. We have to use our wisdom to be able to detect the foolishness in mankind. Okay? All right. 5, 6, and 7. There is an evil I have seen under the sun. Where? On this earth, not in heaven, under the sun. Like an arrow which goes forth from the ruler. Well, we already talked up there before about you must keep your composure. Have we passed that? I didn't talk about that. If the words of the wise... Okay, well, I wanted to bring up that point. I'm moving too quickly, but maybe verse 5, there's evil that goes forth. Well, anyway, we're going to have to go on past that. But keep your composure. I guess he gets into this section now where the ruler, where the king, I feel like he's doing retrospect in himself. And if a ruler makes a bad decision or makes a foolish statement or whatever, then you stand your ground and say, wait a minute now. And it's just like when people address us with aggression. If we respond with aggression, now we got aggression and aggression. We're building aggression, right? But if someone comes on you in aggression and you come in with composure and some sort of wise understanding, it kind of dilutes that aggression out, doesn't it? Many times we see it start to fade. So that's the point I was wanting to make. Don't remember what verse that was. Absolutely. Control the situation. Do not get involved in it. Okay, so then he says, it was verse 4. Maybe I hadn't read that yet. If the ruler's temper arises against you, do not abandon your position, because composure allays great offenses. Yeah, I did read that. There's an evil I have seen under the sun, like an arrow which goes forth from the ruler. Folly is said in many exalted places, while rich men sit in humble places. I have seen slaves riding on horses and princes walking like slaves on the land. New Testament? Who did Christ say was going to be exalted? The humble. Who is going to be humbled? Those who consider themselves exalted. So once again, Solomon is nailing this New Testament concept. I mean, Jesus washed their feet. Was that an exalted position? The position of a slave. So we see this concept that Solomon is just laying out way in front of us. That's in Matthew 23. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Solomon says, I've seen it all the time. These great people that are just horrible, and they're in these big high positions. And these humble people, just like the wise man in the city that nobody paid any attention to his advice. Yeah, not Mordecai, the other guy. Haman, yeah. You know, hey, look, I'm with you all the way, okay? All right, so wisdom is valuable in day-to-day work. He who digs a pit may fall into it, and a serpent may bite him who breaks through the wall. He who quarries stones may be hurt by them, and he who splits logs may be endangered by them. If the axe is dull and he does not sharpen its edge, then he must exert more strength. Wisdom has the advantage of giving success. Be smart. If you're digging a pit, don't go stand over there by the edge. You'd fall off into it. You've got to be smarter than that. If you're breaking through the wall, if you're in a quarry, don't let the stuff. You got to use wisdom. That's power. Wisdom is power. It's using your wisdom. Verse 11, if the serpent bites before being charmed, there's no profit for the charmer. Well, we know they were charming snakes back then. I didn't know they were doing all that. I guess the country was still full of cobras or whatever. But anyway, if you aren't smart and don't do your job, you're not going to charm that snake. Snake, serpent, the devil. See, those always run through my mind when I see him using a serpent as an example for something. You know, it's like, well, he's talking about the devil, more than likely. So, if you're not in control, if you don't use your wisdom, there's a good possibility that snake is going to bite you. Verse 12, words from the mouth of a wise man are gracious, while the lips of a fool consume him. The beginning of his talking is folly, and the end of it is madness. Yet the fool multiplies words. No man knows what will happen, and no man can tell him what will come after him. The toil of a fool so wearies him that he does not even know how to go to a city. Wise words are gracious, he says. What do we say grace is when we talk about the grace of God? Unmerited favor, or things that you get that you don't really earn. So the words of the wise are gifts to us. They're not things that we've earned. They're gracious things. The words of the wise are gracious. We've already talked about the too much talk. We've addressed that. No matter what you say, it's not going to bring insight. The foolish talking over and over and over, saying the same things, multiplying words, it's futile. You're wasting time. It's not going to solve anyone. Again, this concept comes in because no one knows the future or what will come after him. The toil of the fool wearies him so that he can't even go to the city. Well, I didn't know about that, but one of the commentators says he's so foolish you can't take directions. I'm pretty good at directions. Doesn't mean I'm not foolish about other things, but I know some people that you can't tell them, you know. I try to tell some of the musicians I work with how to get to a particular venue where we're playing at a wedding or something like that, and it's like, man, just stay on the phone and I'll talk to you. See the big tree? Take a left, you know, because you just can't follow. Other people have said that he's so foolish that he has worked so hard in his day-to-day after this, talking about the quarry and the breaking down the walls and this work ethic thing. He's worked so hard, he's so tired now he don't even know how to get back home. Can't even get back to the city where he lives. So it could be those things. Okay. 16 and 17, woe to you, O land, whose king is a lad, and whose princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, whose king is of nobility, and whose princes eat at the appropriate time for strength, and not for drunkenness. Through indolence the rafters sag, and through slackness the house leaks. Men prepare a meal for enjoyment, and wine makes life merry, and money is the answer to everything. Furthermore, in your bedchamber do not curse a king, and in your sleeping rooms do not curse a rich man, for a bird of the heavens will carry the sound, and the winged creature will make the matters known. Well, acting childish, acting like a child. Well, the first thing that jumped into mind for me was Josiah. He became king. He's talking about a king, and, woe to those who will. Josiah had more than likely Jeremiah and a bunch of other good guys to lead him, but that popped into mind. But he was noble. That goes into 17. Blessed are you whose king is of nobility, and whose priests eat at an appropriate time. What did we read through all through chapter at the beginning? There's a time for what? A time for this, a time for that. Do it at the right time. That really jumped this up, and we've got to finish this. I just can't stop. What about Belshazzar, who was Nebuchadnezzar's son, who took over Babylon? All right? Y'all remember the handwriting on the wall? What were they doing while the Medes and Persians had dammed up the river and were walking into the city of Jerusalem? All their army and all their generals, where were they? They were at the party with Belshazzar. And we'll talk about more of this later, but as Solomon talks about the future and no one knows, and all of this work and the futility, what about the magnitude of wealth that Solomon massed and all of that stuff? Where'd it go? It went to Babylon. Futility? I mean, hadn't anybody had as much as, we figured the weight of the gold that they brought him every year, and it was in the billions of dollars, and that just kept on. He had more than we can absolutely imagine. And he said, who knows what's going to happen to it when I die and my son takes over? Whether they don't know whether they're going to throw it away or whatever. Well, they did. They threw it all away. Everything that this man massed was gone. Procrastinating makes repairs more difficult. When's the time to fix that sagging roof? Not before the ceiling falls in, right? Let's fix it now. So we see this fool's perspective. Men prepare a meal for enjoyment. Wine makes life merry, and money is the answer to everything. No, he's talking about the fool now. He's not giving us that advice. He also says, if you're going to make some bad statements, maybe don't make them at all. Because even if it happens in your bedroom. Wow, Marlon, how'd you find out about that? A little bird told me. That's exactly what he's saying. A little bird told me. Thank you all for your attention. We got 2 chapters to go. We'll get them next week.